Welcome. This is the second of my podcasts as John Dudley, author. I am still experimenting, so podcast number 2 is rather taken up with reviewing the last podcast and thinking about forthcoming episodes. For writers, there is a cameo by Samuel Becket and a little meditation on getting inured to failure. For wannabe YouTubers or people interested in the behind the scenes of a YouTube channel, there's a bit about that in the second half. Also, I am coming up on my 500 subscribers mark. How to celebrate. There's more on that towards the end. Because this podcast is still in the experimental stage, it's only available as a YouTube video. I'm sorry about that. However, it ought to be something you don't actually have to see to follow. The audio should stand alone. My name is John Dudley. I am a 67-year-old Englishman now holding Swedish citizenship and living in Gothenburg on Sweden's west coast. The best coast, as my local friends would like me to say. I used to work as a teacher and a translator, but since I started drawing a pension, I have been on a quest to reinvent myself as a professional author. My YouTube channel and now this podcast are steps on the road to that goal. I thought the first podcast, which came out on the 3rd of January, was pretty damn good. That is, when I made it, I thought it was good. It hasn't been viewed very much, but of those of you who have watched it, 44% stuck with it all the way to the end, which is a better percentage than for most of my videos, so thank you. After it had been public for about a week, my wife sat with me one evening to watch it. It was her first viewing ever, and my first since I published it. The silence in the living room was intense. She did not smile at any of the jokes. Watching it, I still thought the script was quite good, but the delivery, oh my, the delivery. At the end, my wife turned to me and said, "I didn't realise you were so depressed." Now, I have been depressed, believe me. I spent the better part of my 40s deep underwater. But when I made that first podcast, I wasn't. I promise, not at all. It's true, 2025 was not a great year, but contrary to all previous experience and despite my seasonal affective disorder, I was quite cheerful for most of November and December, quite positive. And when I was writing it, when I was recording it, I thought my podcast was funny. Lugubrious, perhaps, but wryly amusing. But that's not how it came across. I heard it myself as we listened together, my wife and I, but I never heard it while I was making the recording, never heard it while I was editing the audio. Excuses? I have a few. I probably shouldn't have worn the headphones. Listening to my voice through the recorder was a bad move. It made me drop my tone and slow down, in some places, to a creak. But I should have caught and excised the deep breaths that sound so much like sighs. Well, lesson learned. I'm hoping this podcast number 2 will be somewhat better. I have to say it got me thinking about my writing. You know how sometimes you persuade someone to read something you've written, something you think is rather good. They read it and there's a long silence before they get back to you, and when they do, you can tell from the look on their face or the tone of their voice or their choice of words that they think what you've written is just awful. You sense how they struggle to find a polite way, a constructive way to tell you how bad it is. Do you know that? If you don't, if you've never experienced it, I congratulate you. You are either wonderfully gifted and the author of outstanding literature, or you have the sensitivity of tungsten steel, the skin of a rhinoceros. Or I suppose you've never got to the stage of sharing your text with anyone else. Anyway, what I thought in reference to that first podcast was how blind one can be to the faults in one's own work. It's not good to be too self-critical. Of course it isn't. You need to be pleased with something that you've created in order to have the confidence to show it to someone else. But you don't share it for praise. Well, maybe you share it for praise a little bit. But really you share it to get the feedback you need. You have to know that you cannot ever produce something that is perfect. You share what you've written in order to get the critical feedback that tells you where you've messed up, in order to make it again, to make it better. What was it Samuel Becket said? Ever tried? Ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. But I didn't want to spend the whole of this podcast going on about my mistakes in the previous one. Instead, I'd like to say something about the YouTube channel. It's 2 years since I started publishing videos here, and it hasn't been easy. Every time there are technical problems to overcome, which is always interesting but can be frustrating. And making the videos steals time when I could be writing deathless prose. I started because I felt I ought to attempt to build a social media presence, and of all the different ones, social media, all the different ones I'd tried, making videos seemed the most interesting to me and exposed me least to the pointless bruising arguments I see on so many other platforms. The first year, 2024, I published 12 videos, and in 2025, I published 18. At the end of the first year, in January 2025, I was delighted to see my subscriber count stand at 100. Over 2025 and into January 2026, that number has risen by another 300. I must be doing something right. My target is 1,000 subscribers because that number unlocks some privileges from YouTube. Among other things, better control, some control at all, over where YouTube can break my videos and place adverts in them. Well, it does at present, but the process of enshittification is ever ongoing, so who knows what the future may hold. There's also a possibility that I might earn money from the videos at some point, but for that I need 4,000 plus viewing hours in a 12-month period, and that's a much harder nut to crack. At the moment I record this, I have 402 subscribers, and in the last year I've attracted 591 viewing hours. It's fantastic, but you can see how short it falls from the 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 viewing hours targets. No matter. As things stand, I see a milestone coming up. How should I celebrate my 500th subscriber? Halfway to my first target. I've been looking around and I see other YouTubers celebrating with Ask Me Anything sessions, or with live streams, or with live streamed Ask Me Anything sessions. I honestly don't know how a live stream would work, so, it might be fun to find out. Or it might be an occasion to listen to silence. Or maybe I could set up a Zoom-style open conference. What do you think I should do? Drop me a suggestion in the comments or in reply to the Instagram, Facebook or Mastodon post advertising this when it's published. Or go through the contact form on my website. Maybe I'll run a poll in my YouTube channel's community posts section. Okay, I reckon I've got to the end of what I can reasonably expect anyone to listen to now. I do hope I come across more upbeat than last time. Thanks for hearing me talk. Until the next time, cheerio.